What's up guys, it's Will Does Things, and today we're going to be starting a new video series called Will Builds Things. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be building an electric guitar, a Firebird style electric guitar off of a kit I bought on AliExpress. It was about $200. I went out and bought some replacement stuff, like tuners, pickups, a new bridge for it, and I'm currently about halfway through the process. I'm filming this in the middle of the process because I actually filmed the video earlier and I don't know how, but I lost the footage somehow, so we're gonna do this again. So we're gonna start off with gluing in the neck, and then this video right now that you guys are watching is going to be the prepping for the painting. It's gonna go everything from gluing the neck in up until finishing the sanding on the grain filling. And it's going to end up with a clean, sanded guitar. The next video that I'm going to put up is going to be painting, which is going to be sanding sealer, then sanding down the sanding sealer, then painting, and then lacquer. And that will be up, hopefully, by this Sunday. And that's relative to what day I'm putting up the video right now, which is probably going to be a Wednesday. So, let's get into gluing the neck. So I'd like to preface this by saying this is my first time building an electric guitar, and I don't really know what I'm doing other than videos that I have watched online about this. So take all of this with a little bit of caution, as this will be about as much of a learning experience for y'all as it is for me. So what I've found is I've sanded down all the contacts here, and actually there's a little bit of a yeah, it's fine. I was about to say there's a little bit of a burr there, but that's, I wouldn't think, not too big of a problem. So what I've found is, actually let me go get some gloves first of all. So I'm getting some of this Type Bond in this cup right here, and that'll just give me a fairly easy way to stick it on either like a paintbrush or even just my finger, and spread that stuff around in there. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to use just my fingers to rub it onto the sides here. Alright, so now that Type Bond is on there, I'm going to carefully lay that neck down. We're going to take off the dirty glove, throw that in the trash back there, and then what we're going to do now is I'm going to get some clamps and some paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to clamp the neck and the body together, and then we will let that sit for as long as we need to. Alrighty, so we have got this clamped up. We have two clamps as close as I could get next to each other, and we got one on the very edge that's keeping that end right at the joint down, and then one back here that will keep this back end that's down on the guitar in the front, the neck pickup cavity. That'll keep that end down and stable. So basically we're going to wait for this to cure. From the look of the Type Bond, it says clamp for a minimum, but yeah, so 24 hours, or at least don't stress the joints for 24 hours. So that'll be good. I'll probably leave this overnight, and then like I said, I got a thing to go to tomorrow, so I'll unclamp the clamps and then leave this to cure while I'm gone on vacation, and then I think that will be good. I'll get back to you guys once this is all ready. Alright, we're back in the shop, and I've got a cup of grain filler mixed up right here. I basically used the entire can of it, and I've added some warm water to it, mixed it up so it's about the consistency of a smoothie, and that stuff stinks, let me tell you. So what we're going to be doing is, I've sanded this all, so it's all good, all the you know, the glue on it has been sanded off. It's all smooth and stuff, and I couldn't quite get the connection between the neck joint and the actual neck to sort of meld together. It seemed like it would be a really long time sanding, or I would have to get my barrel sander that you would put into a drill bit, and for some reason I can't find that. So what I'm going to be doing is basically throwing on a pair of gloves and then just slapping this stuff on. It really, I'm going to be wiping it with this piece of cardboard that's flat, and just basically wiping it across, or with the grain first on that flame maple top I've got there, and then doing the rest of it, or wiping it with the grain and then across the grain to get it worked in there, and then I'll just be hand rubbing it in on the sides and everything. So I'm going to quickly tape up this neck so I don't get any on the fretboard, the binding, or any stuff like that. So I'll get that done, and then we'll start grain filling. Alrighty, so we've got the neck all taped up here. I spent about 10, maybe 15 minutes getting this all perfect and straight and stuff, and there's a little tag right there, but that's fine, we can work around it. So this is all protected, and basically what I'm going to do is like I said before, I'll throw on some gloves and we'll start getting this stuff on here. So enjoy. Alrighty, so the tar is grain film. I'm going to leave it to dry overnight, and then what we're going to do is we'll come back later, maybe tomorrow if I have time, and once this is all dry, we'll start the re-sanding. We'll sand all the stuff off, get all the little excess pieces of grain filler off, and then hopefully we'll have a beautifully highlighted flame maple top to work with. Alright, so it's been about 3 days and a lot's happened in the workshop since I've filmed. What happened was I grain filled, and you guys saw that, and I've just showed the sanding of most of it. But what I found was that the grain filler was not supposed to go on the flame maple, and I didn't realize that until after I put it on and sanded some of it off. I was beginning to see this flame pattern, but it didn't look great. In fact, it looked pretty terrible, actually. So I went online and I looked up some stuff, and apparently what I was supposed to do was use a dye, because what a dye does is it gets into the pores of the maple and creates a lens, sort of, and that lens reflects light. And with that reflecting light, the higher parts will get amplified, and the lower parts, which are darker, will remain dark, which it'll accentuate the wood without filling it in. And what I did was I filled it in. But with grain filler, what that'll do is you'll lose the shimmer of the flame maple. It'll get this weird, like, matte gray color, at least with the stuff I used. And I realized that too late, obviously. So what I did was I got incredibly lucky, and I realized that I could sand through the whole top of the grain filler and everything, and I would still have this maple on top of it. And it looks about like it did before I started the whole grain filling process, you can sort of see there's a spot here and one spot right there where you can see that the mahogany underneath this now nanometers thin top, the mahogany is starting to show through, and I've stopped sanding. I got this to a 400 grit finish. Unfortunately, there's one scratch that runs along the side that's pretty hard to see on camera, but it's relatively noticeable in person. So I'm just going to leave this there. I'll try to get to grain filling, or not grain filling. I'll try to get to sanding sealer in a few days, but like I said, a lot's happened off camera, and I've sanded down most of it. I've gotten most of the neck done, most of the headstock, aside from some of the crevices here in this area, and like the neck joint. And then another thing I have to do is, I was foolish and did not plug up these holes, and especially the tuning peg holes, and now they're filled with grain filler. So I'm gonna have to get a drill bit and basically by hand just route those out. But anyway, that's where we are right now. What I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be finishing off these pesky little areas, like right in here. There's a few spots here, and then most of the headstock is kind of being a pain in my rear end. So I'm gonna set it down. I'll put on some music, and we'll be at this for a little bit, and then I'll let you guys know when we're done, and then we'll get on to sanding sealer as soon as we can. Alrighty, so we're done sanding. The whole guitar's finished. I got a 400 grit at least finish on all the surfaces of the guitar. There's some spots that I had a little bit of trouble with, mainly that part right in here, because I didn't smooth that transition out when I glued in the neck, and because of that, some grain filler got stuck in there. That's actually just a piece of tape right there. But anyway, I'm going to take to that area right there with probably a nail file, and that'll smooth it out, and then I'll get some 800 or 400 grit and just sort of smooth that area out. Some other areas I had a lot of trouble with were some of the areas up here. Actually, the areas up here weren't even that hard to sand. It's just I had to make, basically what I did was I built a sort of circular sanding block. I took a 220 grit sandpaper, wrapped it around a cardboard tube, and then just sort of taped it on, and I would use that to just sort of roll into that, and it actually worked pretty well. But other than that, the headstock wasn't too bad. The neck was pretty easy, obviously. Yeah, it's just like the tops of stuff. There's a few darker marks there. Just the edge in general is a little bit darker than the rest of the body, and the transition right here. But other than that, I think it turned out pretty well, actually. So what I'm going to do now is the stock nut that is on here is plastic and probably pretty garbage. So what I'm going to do instead is, I probably should have done this before when I glued the neck on, but what can you do? I'll take that nut off. I'll scrape the rest of the grain filler. There's just tiny bit in there. I'll scrape the rest of the grain filler off, put the new nut on, and then I think we'll be good to go for sanding sealer. I just took the tape off just to see how it would come off, because I wasn't sure, because that grain filler stuff, and I'll tell you about that now. That grain filler stuff dries hard, and it can be a pain in the butt to get it off. I probably spent a good 4 hours sanding that entire thing off. Probably 50% of which was on the top alone, and I talked to you about that before. Talked to you guys about that, but it dries hard, and I would suggest when you put it on that you don't put too much on. I tried with the stuff I had was about the consistency of a smoothie. I would maybe even go a little bit lighter than, not lighter, but more fluid than that. Add just a little bit more water till maybe it's sort of syrupy. Maybe that consistency. But yeah, that, like I said, that stuff dries hard, and it'll be a pain in the butt to get off. Some of the holes, again, I talked to you before about that, but some of the holes I still have to hand drill out, and that's going to be a pain as well. So all the sanding's done. What I'm going to do now is, it's currently Friday for me. It's Friday night. And what I'm going to do is, in our garage over this way, I'm going to back the car out, and I'm going to build myself a little makeshift spray booth. And I'll show you guys how to do that later, or at least how I'm going to do it. I'm going to hang plastic sheeting from the ceiling, and then just sort of make a thing, maybe tape it shut. And then what I'm going to do is, once I get those holes drilled out again, I'm going to make a hook that hangs from the ceiling, so that when I spray paint this, it'll hang from one of these, and it'll basically hang straight up and down, so I can spray it directly. And I think that'll do the trick. Mr. Stephen McSwain, again, the guy I was talking to about this, he's sort of my subject expert. Mr. Stephen McSwain has the same sort of setup, except what he does is he'll put a connection actually in one of the pickup holes. So he'll put a thing right here, but I don't have that, and I don't have the parts for that, or the confidence. So the next stage in this is going to be the painting. I'm glad to be done with sanding. It's been a pain in my rear end, but I'm glad to be done. I'm glad to be moving on. It looks great. It looks as good as I could hope for it. And I guess the next step is going to be painting. So I will see you guys probably on Sunday for me. So it'll give me about 2 days until I get to sanding sealer, and then by Monday I'll have a week to paint it. Then I'm going to be off to Portland, and then I'm going to be done soldering and having a functional guitar by next Thursday, I think. So bit of a tight timeline, building a guitar in more or less 15 days. And then after that, I'll do some fine tuning on it, and we'll be in the running. So I'm glad to be done. I'm glad to be done sanding. It's a pain in my butt. So I'll see you guys in minutes for you guys, but it'll be about 3 days, 2 or 3 days for me. So I'll see you guys then.